Today, we're going to talk about the most difficult hiring for the most difficult position, and that's top producing salespeople. I've been doing this for 25 years, and hiring top salespeople is probably the most difficult thing that any business owner will do. And the reason I think this is so important is because I've done it for many, many years, and I did it for the wrong way many, many years. And I think we figured out a lot of the ways to make it right. So let's talk about that. When I first started out in business and with our first company, I went through when we needed salespeople and we got big enough where it was somebody besides me, we went through the pain of trying to hire good salespeople. And if you've ever done it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, we did the throw everything against the wall and, give them commissions and hope they work out because we didn't know any better, or the interview of, hey, how's the weather? And, how are you doing today? Tell me about yourself, those kind of things, and just kind of guessing who was going to work out, who had a vibrant personality, who was going to work out in that sense, and because everybody always thinks, well, they're a bubbly person. Oh yeah, they'll be a great salesperson, which we'll talk about that later. But, we had all kinds of crazy stuff happen. And the frustration, though, in years of doing that is that it was so hit and miss, and we wasted so much money. I mean, just tons of money. And depending on what kind of, salespeople you're hiring, whether they're straight commission, they're salary plus commission, draw against any number of things, if they have benefits or not, whatever it is, it's super expensive. And, from a business owner standpoint, it's extremely stressful too, because you're constantly trying to hire the right people, and then you're tolerating people trying to figure out who you should get rid of, who you shouldn't, all that. And I don't know if you can relate to any of this, but was not easy to figure this out. And it's only been probably in the last 5 to 10 years that I really figured out how to do this. And the biggest thing is that I realized that sales is not a talent, it's a skill. And some people will disagree with that, but if you stick with me, I think I'll show you why that makes a difference and why that's true. So again, a long time ago when we were started out, doing this, we would hire salespeople, and it was so frustrating because, one, we could barely get people to show up for the job. And so it was kind of like, if you showed up and, you're breathing, pretty much you were hired back then, because we hired all locally. There was no, remote, workers and that sort of thing like we have these days. It was whatever the local work pool is. And, because we were doing phone sales, of course, it attracts a different kind of person, we'll say it that way. Not high-end executive, salespeople, someone, that make, $250,000. These are lower end of the salary range and commission-based type of people. And, we got some very entertaining stories of it, I'll say it that way. But it was just throw it against the wall, wasted an enormous amount of money, enormous amount of time on my part, my business partner's part, all the people in our office, going through the interviewing, only for next week when they didn't either show up or we had to fire them because they weren't producing. It's just, oh, what a mess, And so we went through all that. And what I realized along the way, again, was that sales is actually a skill and it's not a talent. And I figured out the ways and what attributes that top salespeople have that other people don't have. And, if we know those things, it makes it so much easier to be able to hire right, to be able to find the right salespeople and train them in the right way. Because if we don't, then we get all those things we talked about, that revolving door, that huge waste of money, all that kind of stuff. And as a business owner, that's super important to us, because how can we run, and, we can generate all the revenue we want in the world, but if we give it all away because we're wasting it away on salespeople that don't work out, good luck with that model. So it's one of the most frustrating but important things for us to get down. So bottom line, if we know the attributes of a great salesperson, then we can spot those a mile away. What does it limit the mistakes that we make in hiring? I mean, we're never going to be 100% perfect, but the mistakes that we make in hiring are so costly, whether it's for salespeople or someone else, both in terms of time and money. But if we know those things up front, they're easy to spot, and it's if you get this right, it's no more stress, because let's face it, any business owner who's a decent person doesn't like to fire people, unless that person's a real jerk, and then you might get some pleasure out of that. But, in general, we don't like to fire people, and that's not a fun part of our job, creates the stress. We hire somebody, we think we're all excited, they're going to do great, and then we see them actually in action, we're like, oh no, we just made another mistake, And so knowing these attributes gets rid of all that. And if you haven't hired salespeople, but you will someday, then you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Or hopefully you won't go through that frustration if you focus on what we're going to talk about. So, and when I'm going to talk about these attributes of salespeople, this is not, done by some study from some psychology, study by a large company, whatever. This is based purely on my experience, and so it's my opinion. But just to give you a background, I was adding up. I've probably hired over 100 in-person salespeople that worked in phone rooms for us and that sort of thing. These are phone sales professionals. And then, if you count just cold callers that we have working for us, doing lead generation and things like that, it's probably upwards of 500, over 25 years doing this. So I've seen a lot of people, and that has given me, some idea there's things that you can look at in a group of people and realize that there's commonalities. You got to be an idiot, not to pick up on the themes after a while. So I've had a lot of experience in that, and so I never really thought about it, though, until recently. I kind of put down these attributes. I thought, what are the top things that I've noticed over the years? And that's what I wanted to share with you today. Okay, so let's get into some specifics. Again, if you've ever hired salespeople before, particularly in person, whether they're door-to-door people, whether they're retail salespeople, whether they're phone salespeople. Unfortunately, in the phone sales telemarketing world, if you've ever seen some of those movies like Boiler Room and some of those other crazy movies about, telemarketing rooms, so to speak, you can, even in the movies, they put crazy characters in there, but in real life, it's even crazier. We had a guy, older gentleman that, bless his heart, but, he came out, I think he worked for us for 2 days before we had to let him go, and we kind of gave him a nickname, Narco, and it's not because he was, a Colombian trafficker of cocaine. It was because the poor guy seemed like he had narcolepsy. He would literally be on the phone talking to somebody, and he would fall asleep. We've had another girl that show up and, get on the phone, and she was clearly drunk from the night before. We've had a guy that was on the phone with a prospect and got mad because the prospect wasn't cooperating, and he told the guy he was going to, effing kill him, come to his place of business. So, we've had all kinds of stuff over the years and all kinds of crazy people. And those are obviously not the people that we want or anybody wants with their business, but it's just the nature of when you're trying to hire for sales position, because a lot of people think, and this is a perception of sales, that a lot of people think that, well, you get a job in sales because you can't do anything else, because it takes no skill and it's just a personality thing to BS your way through something and twist somebody's arm. It's tenacity or whatever. And that's not true at all, in my opinion. So, if you look at it, it's a very difficult thing to do if you don't know what you're doing, because especially if you're trying to do it the wrong way. And the wrong way is to focus on the sales personality, so to speak, which is, what do we all say? That person is, they're real jovial, they're outgoing, they like to BS and tell stories or whatever. They tell jokes, ha ha ha, they're the life of the party. And that's who we think of as salespeople. They think, oh, that person's a great salesperson, because of that. And when, in effect, that's not really true, because an introvert, somebody who's quiet or whatever, can blow an extrovert out of the water every time, if they have the right sales skills. So it really is a skill, and it's not a talent. And we'll talk about what those skills are in a second. But again, if we know these top attributes of salespeople, then we can identify them up front, and we waste a lot less time. We save an enormous amount of money, and we actually enjoy bringing on new people for our sales force. Okay, so let's get these down. Let's start with, there's actually 5 attributes, I think, that I'm sure there's more, but these are the top 5 ones I came up with. And, if you're in sales or whatever, you may not agree with this, but again, hey, this is after hundreds of people. This is my opinion of what I've seen, and I think it's pretty accurate. So what's the first thing that most top producers have in common? Well, it's that P word, prospecting, which, most salespeople, amazingly enough, do not like to do. And it's understandable, because most of the time they do it wrong, and because it's painful, like we talked about, in different, when we talked about closing and the HSC model and things, it makes sense why they don't like a prospect, because it's painful and it's full of rejection because it's being done wrong. But so if the first attribute is prospecting, and prospecting daily and consistently. Wait, get my handwriting. So one of the things that I've seen top salespeople do is they will prospect, even if it's, even if they've got a great pipeline and they're busy doing other stuff and they're just in closing mode, they will prospect for new prospects minimum hour a day, no matter what. And they will block that on their calendar. What most of them will do it first thing in the morning, which is what I always recommend when I learned sales. And they do that because they know that if they don't stay focused on putting prospects into the pipeline, they're going to start caring about that one lead, so to speak. Well, I got this one guy who's about to buy, that sort of attitude. And that's a huge thing that you see the opposite with. Poor salespeople don't prospect consistently. They'll, get a role, it's like, hey, I did an hour today of phone calls, whatever. I did an hour, day before, and then I'm going to take today off, You don't see top salespeople doing that because they understand you cannot get momentum without it. So prospecting is the number one thing. And again, they don't focus on the one lead because they don't have to. The second one is their, I can write correctly here, customer focused. That sounds, kind of cheesy, like, oh yeah, customer focused. No, I'm serious. That top salespeople actually care about their customers and care about their prospects. They really believe in what they're selling. They believe that they're changing somebody's life for the better. And they're not about twisting arms. They're about influencing people to do something that actually benefits them. And if the top salespeople, if they know that their product or service, whatever they're offering, it's not appropriate for that person, even if they've got the skill to kind of trick the person into buying, they won't do it. They'll walk away from the sale. And you know what? That actually helps them become a better salesperson, have better results, because the prospects know that. We can try, deceiving each other, but humans are very good at picking up on another person if the other person is being honest and telling the truth or not. And, a lot of times they will pick up on that, even if it's very subtle. A prospect will say, you know what, I don't trust this guy because he's saying stuff and he's trying to push me into this thing, but I don't know if that's right for me, type of thing. And they will know, because we can pick that up as humans. But the opposite of that is true, that if the salesperson, a top salesperson, tells them, you know what, I think this product would be great. It's a great product, or this is a great service. It's really fantastic. But given your situation and what you need right now and what you're telling me you desire, I don't think this is right for you. So I don't want to sell this to you. And you know what? That makes a huge difference. And that comes across to the other person. And guess what? They're going to be referring their friends and saying, hey, you know what? This product wasn't appropriate for me, but it looks like it might be for you. You need to call that guy because he's honest. And that is a huge thing. Honesty in sales and being upfront with people, being willing to turn it down. So that's number two for, customer focus for top sales.